Good morning, everybody. This is Walk the Dog with Riot Mort, and it is 5:45 a.m. Nice and early. I'm awake, having a quiet week, which is very weird. It's PBE week, and it's quiet for me. um, I don't like it, but yeah. I saw the team worked really, really hard over the weekend to deliver a very large PBE patch, which was awesome to see. So hopefully those changes are all the changes that help make KO Coliseum even better. Hopefully you guys are having fun. It's kind of weird. I actually don't think I'm going to have time to play. Actually, it's not that I'm not going to have time. I could make the choice to spend my evenings playing PBE. I could, but I'm not supposed to, and I'm supposed to try to dial it back. So instead, probably what I'm going to do this weekend, or this week, is my copy of Donkey Kong comes today. So tonight I'll probably start playing that, which will be pretty fun. I haven't had a really good Nintendo game in a while. So I'm looking forward to playing that tonight. That'll be fun. But yeah, other than that, it's pretty uneventful. So that means I get to answer your guys' questions. And I brought 5 today. I'll see if we can get through all 5. I don't know if we can, but let's see. All right, first question. What is the impact to set 16 with me gone for 3 months? Will it have any implications? Is there some quality concerns? Anything like that? So the good news is I hope the impact is close to none. And the reason I can say that is that generally, historically, where I'm the most useful on sets, me personally, in my skill set, is the beginning and the end. The beginning to lay the foundation to make sure that we're heading down the right path, and the end to balance / polish / tighten up the edges / solve any last minute problems. That's kind of my specialty. The middle phase, so this is like after the first 3 months and before the last 3 months of a set, is a lot about more tech work and a little less design work. So it's about getting the scripting done on champions, making sure they all work right, setting up the foundations for the set mechanic. This is where a lot of our tech designers are especially valuable. Now, that's not to say there's no design work, right? An example of something that might happen in the middle 3 months is like you do an initial play test after your paper document and realize a trait's not working, so you need to slightly rework it. Or maybe you have too much backline access in a set, so you rework a champion spell to a different spell. Like, there will be adjustments in this phase, but there are also adjustments that, like, I'm very confident in the team that they can handle those types of adjustments. And usually those are the big problems that are pretty obvious, that are like, okay, we got to solve this, no problem. You know, in between, excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. Usually between the sets pod and the finalization team, I can count on a lot of those problems getting solved. I'm not worried about that. The team handles it super awesome. And so the impact of me being like, this is where I usually go do other things, right? This is where I might be focused on live or taking on another project like the double up cannon or whatever, because the team has this stuff, right? So in the case of set 16, what I can tell you is I was very involved in the foundation building. So I'm pretty confident in the foundation. And then I should be back, if the 3 months goes as planned, that's July, August, September. That gives me October and November to come in and do any final touches. So, which is when I would usually be hitting that anyway, because that would be the point where like 15 live is getting pretty stable. There's not much live work to do, and I would be able to help with that. So, like I said, I think the actual impact specifically to 16, if everything plays out as it should be minor. The other thing I'll also say is that over the last, year or two, our finalization team has been getting better and better and better. And we've just been better at recognizing certain problems and things like that. So it hasn't been nearly as bad in those last few months. Basically there would be a point where I would come in and review the set and sort of point out all the ooh, we got to fix this, we got to fix this. And I would say each time I do that now, that list is smaller and smaller. So we're getting better. And in fact, I think set 15, watching the team do the work they've done without me, sort of shows how capable they've been. Compare this to set 12 when I was gone. And I think it feels like the team has made significant improvements. So yeah, TLDR here is that, again, if everything goes according to plan, 16 should be mostly unaffected and should be awesome. And like I said, when I, moved on, I was like, I'm definitely coming back to TFT because we're doing some cool stuff in the future. So, yeah. Yeah, that's all I can say for now. Obviously, I got to be pretty vague here, but yeah, I'm not too worried about it. So, yeah, cool. All right, got through a question quick. We did it. All right. The next one was less of a question, more of a statement, but it was one of those statements followed by, what are your thoughts? And the statement here is that mana items aren't distinct enough. And the comparison they used was, if you look at our attack speed items, this being Ginsu's, Red Buff, and Quicksilver, they each have pretty distinct outputs, right? Which is, Red Buff is a little less attack speed, but you get the anti-heal. Quicksilver is a little less attack speed, but you get the CC immunity. And then Ginsu's is you just get a bunch of attack speed, right? And there's a choice between those. Likewise, you could compare Sin that Death Cap is gain a lot of AP, Jeweled Gauntlet is gain less AP, but you can crit, and Archangel is gain AP, but over time instead of all up front, right? Those are relatively different. So the person was stating, though, that mana items, if you look at Blue Buff and Shojin and Nashers, are all kind of the same. They're all gain mana, and there really isn't that much of a difference between them. And yes, which one is best on who, that's different, but their actual output is all pretty much the same. Was this a design choice, or is there something else going on? Was kind of the question. So I think the answer is we could probably do better here. I think there is an argument to say that mana generation should be changed. That being said, the design space for this differentiation is pretty limited. For example, I think hilariously enough now, if you look at Morello and Blue Buff could be the same as Red Buff and Ginsu's, right? Ginsu's and Blue Buff are gain a lot of that stat. Morello's and Red Buff are gain less of that stat, because Morello's is mana gen now, but gain the anti-heal, And so those two actually end up pretty similar by that same comparison. Now, Shojin and Blue Buff, though, those are pretty similar. Those are pretty darn similar. So, should they be different? Maybe. But that's the thing. You're going to end up with a lot of parallels, right? So maybe, for example, Nashers is supposed to be gain mana regen over time, so that, at the start of the fight, it's only 2 mana regen. 10 seconds in, it's 5 mana regen. And by the end of the fight, it's 10 mana regen. So it becomes the Archangels of mana regen. Maybe. There's a world that could work. Do we need a mana regen crit item? Maybe, although that would mean 3 mana or 3 crit items. But so I don't know. I kind of agree with you that maybe there could be some differentiation. but there is already some. So, yeah, blue buff and Shojin in particular. And then I think right now Nashor's is this weird one that, like, even though it's actually, like, it might be balanced and it's pretty good, the identity of it is very confusing. It's not very clear who you put it on. But even Morello's, like, that's one where I think, like, it just hasn't had its branding pushed yet. People don't realize that it is the mono regen item that gives you anti-heal. Now, part of that could be tuning, right? Like, I believe blue buff is 5 mono regen, and Morello is 2. Like, maybe Morello is supposed to be 3, and that'll help sell that, 3 mono regen and 15 AP instead of 2 mono regen and 20 AP. So, but I think the thing that makes the item system successful, kind of to what you were talking about here, is that if you look at an item, any particular item, and go, I understand what this item's identity is, it's a successful item, right? So this being red buff, I want attack speed and anti-heal. Makes sense. Quicksilver, I want attack speed and CC immunity. Makes sense. Archangel, I want AP and my fights are long. Makes sense, right? Like, all of these have very clear identities. Deathblade, I just want a lot of AD up front. You get the idea. I think anytime you look at an item and you're like, I'm not sure when I need this, that's when we are in trouble and need to rework something or figure out a way to make its identity sharper. We almost screwed this up with Sterix during the rework, where for a while there during the rework, Sterix was going to have Omnivamp. But then, like, the line between it and Bloodthirster became so narrow. So instead, we ended up pulling off the Omnivamp and buffing the AD to where Sterix became the, I want my melee unit to do the most damage possible, Sterix. I want my melee unit to do less damage but survive better, Bloodthirster, right? Like, that helped delineate those two items' identities. And so I do agree that, like, Shojin and blue buff, it's like, even right now, I think people are debating, well, the rule is if they have higher than 0.5 AS, but that's not entirely true either, because some units gain yeah, we could do a better job delineating those. I'm agreeing with you, I think. So, something we can work on for sure. Now, brainstorming off the top of my head, what does that ideas look like? Dumb example could be, no, I don't know. You'd have to really think through it. Like, okay, dumb example might be if, blue buff is, actually, let's do the Archangels thing, right? Like, blue buff is 5 mono regen, and Shojin is 3 mono regen, but every time you auto, gain some AD and AP, or every time you every time you cast your spell, gain 2 mono regen, or something. No. Yeah, I mean, yeah, that could work. Every time you cast your spell, gain 2 mono regen, so that it becomes sort of the Archangels and good on people who, although, no, then it becomes like the old blue buff. So that's not right. So anyway, I'm not going to sit here and brainstorm solutions, but yeah, TLDR here is there could be some better differentiation on the mod item side. Now, is that solution super easy to come up with? Not necessarily, but I agree. And I think the item system is best when we differentiate between those items. So I agree. All right, next question. Yes. Okay. TFT Lore. It seems like behind the scenes, there are these little lore tidbits, like in Cyber City, what's going on with the squirrel hacking the train, or the mole hacking the train, and the squirrel getting kidnapped, and what are Elise and Kobuko doing? What's going on with the lore here? And why don't we explore it more? Why don't we, publish little articles that talk about the lore and tell you what's going on in Cyber City, right? Same with KO Coliseum. It's pretty clear there's something going on here with, Thresh and Whiskers setting up an arena and teams fighting. But like, what's going on here? Tell me about the story. Why aren't we exploring the story here? So this is an interesting question because it goes to player motivations around games, the type of game you're making, and the type of devs you have on your team. I'm going to pick on Sloan because I know he hangs out in my Discord. But there are going to be devs that like this narration is the kind of thing they're excited about, right? Like telling stories through characters is a common thing that a lot of game devs want to do, okay? And there are good mediums within games to do this, right? There are definitely story-based games out there. TFT is not a story-based game. TFT is an incredibly deep mechanics-based game where the game systems are doing the lifting and you are playing the game for those systems. Much like something like Slay the Spire or, many, many other examples. And so because of that, what we have found in the few times we've tried to explore this lightly is that most of our players not very interested in the lore behind TFT, but which is actually a little painful because we have a lot of devs on our team that want to tell those stories. They want to, make a new character and talk about their backstory and how they fit into the world and talk about these conflicts and write stories. That's fun, And you can see shades of that in a lot of the work we do, right? Like the Into the Arcane cutscene tells a story. And like there was 2 parts to it and had, some hilarious stories to it. The Cyber City cutscene clearly tells a story of something going on, but it's not a major focus. And that can actually be really hard for a lot of the devs who index on that stuff and work really hard on that stuff, that we don't get to fully explore it. And the thing is, the person who asked this question is clearly somebody who's interested in that stuff. So to say that like no one's interested would be completely false, right? There are definitely players who are interested. Necrit fans, where you at? But the reality is the majority of our players, from what we can tell, are not, right? Like League and TFT are not story-based games. And so it's sort of hard to justify, the resources towards the storytelling, frankly, more than we already do. I think, you could argue that, like, and again, I'm not saying this, but like, you could argue that the Cyber City cinematic would have been better suited to just be a montage of lots of characters with no real story behind it, as opposed to what it was, which was this like clearly a bit of a story of something going on and a prisoner being freed and hacked and whatever. You could make that argument, but I think the story has a lot of character. I think it highlights things in context and is really well done. So it's actually one of those things that I think everyone's going to have a different opinion on. And when I say everyone, I mean like everyone on the team, right? Like there are people that, again, feel strongly that we can like tell stories because telling stories creates more affinity for the world and more affinity for the set. And but one of the challenges with that is that like as you dig deeper, you'll want to explore that story more, right? Like, do all 60 characters need a background of what they're doing at the convergence this time? We probably can't really justify that level of exploration behind the lore. And so all of our, data and research and conclusions and whatever tend us to believe that that's not really what people are excited about in TFT. What they're excited about are what are the new mechanics they get to play with? What are the changes to the game rules? How do they adjust it? And again, this isn't to say it doesn't matter, right? Like, because if you go to the other extreme where all you care about is mechanics, then we could just have every set be a Runeterra set and it'd be fine, right? Because nobody cares about thematics. Well, no, that's definitely not true either, right? The thematic wrapper actually has a lot of impact on the set. And I would say KO Coliseum is major, major proof of that. because so far the thematic wrapper on KO Coliseum is like getting a lot of people amped up. A lot of people are pretty excited by that. So that matters. It's a car. So yeah, that's why, like I said, I mean, again, if you're somebody who likes those stories and things like that, I get it. That's just not the game that TFT is. And so I'm sure a lot of our devs will find ways to tell stories in light ways through it. But on the highest level, it's very hard for us to justify like deep lore explorations. So yeah. So there you go. All right. Ooh, this one's fun. Data and decision making in TFT. How much do we use data? What does it do? How much do our data collectors try to grab, etc.? This is a question that I think has a lot of misunderstanding around it. I think a lot of people, and when I say a lot of people, I mean actually like not just players, but like even Riot devs, people who work at Riot or in the industry or want to work in the industry. They view data as this like magical tool that gives you all the answers. Okay? And what I'll tell you is I have a very different perspective than a lot of people on data. I find that data can incredibly mislead you, can be misunderstood very frequently, and can make you complacent in your own understanding of a game. Let me give you an example. One of the hardest things in making games, because you guys have heard me talk about how making games, you need to be efficient, make good games and make them efficiently. Another car. Same car. It's just decided you need to turn around. Okay. Whatever. You need to make games efficiently. In that efficiency means you need to have decision making. Hey, should we make the menu look like this or like this? Decide, right? And a really good game developer will look at that decision, quickly weigh the pros and cons, and go, we should do A. I'm 70% sure of it. Let's go with A. No problem, move forward. The problem is a lot of people they lack the confidence to make that kind of decision. They worry, what if I'm making the wrong decision? What if this is like not the right thing? How do I know? Data will solve my problem. Data will tell me the answer. And so we should spend time getting data instead of just making a decision. One of the worst examples of this that I just find terrible is, hey, the way we should figure out which menu to use is we should A/B test. And we should put it in front of players and use the data we collect from our A/B test to make this decision making. I find this to be atrocious. I find this to be just a lack of understanding in your own product, and a really good sign, like, how we always talk about how, like, is AI going to replace everyone in the future? That's a really good way to end up being AI replaced, because an AI can just do a bunch of stuff and tell you the answer. If that's the case, what do they need you for, right? Like, oftentimes in this industry, we need decisive decision making with good analysis that makes sense. Why am I bringing all this up? Because again, data is a lot of the same thing, where both outside the industry and inside, people are like, can't we just use data to figure out which set thematic will be the most popular? Well, we can certainly use it to understand which one people have an affinity to based on their understanding from a few images of what they picture in their head, but that is not necessarily the end product that will be delivered, and you need to have an understanding of that end product in order for that to work out. And again, like, if you just go to the data, like, Dumb example here is, let's say we do a player survey around what our set 18 thematic is going to be, and we show them 10 thematics, and we let the players vote, and the number one we just go blindly, that's our thematic, right? Like, that's not great, but is it useful to understand what players have affinity for? Yeah, and so we could maybe, look at the top 5 and sort of go, okay, which of these do we think has the best chance to make a good set, right? Like, that's a good way to use data. And to be fair to all the people on our team that collect data, that's what they do, right? They don't try to give us the answer. They try to give us more context so we can make those efficient answers quicker, right? And so all of our data people are gathering more resources to help us, but it is still up to the designer, developer, whoever, to make the right decision quickly and efficiently with the help of being informed by that data. The buzzwordy thing that a lot of our people will use is, we're not data driven, we're data informed. That's the buzzword way of putting it. But at the high level, what it basically means is we gather data and we read that data, but it just helps us with our understanding. I've talked about this a lot on the balance side of things. With that vein example I tell all the time, right? Data is simply an understanding of how the game is currently being played, not how it could be played or how it should be played. But it is very useful to understand how the game is being played right now. Or data can help us understand, like, for example, we do surveys after each set, like 2 or 4 weeks into the set, and we're like, how did you like the set mechanic? And now we have this whole stack ranking from set 6 to set 13 of like how every mechanic was liked by our survey. And again, and I'm being a little spicy here, but like, I will see people freak out because one mechanic was at 72% liked and the other mechanic was at 64% liked. And like, that clearly says something. It's like, no, that's just data, slight margin of errors. And basically what those numbers mean is they're both like pretty solid mechanics, right? But people who are inexperienced with data will freak out about a 1% or 2% difference. And that's the thing. If you get too deep in the weeds, you start looking for things that don't necessarily, and you see this with TFT players too, right? It's like, well, this one's a 4.4 with a 13.1% win rate, and this one's a 4.5 with a 14.2% win rate. Let's make wild sweeping claims about this. And it's like, well, what's the reason for that? Is it because they're tied to certain comps? Do those comps have yeah. So again, data to me is valuable, but when leaned on too heavily, becomes a crutch for a lack of knowledge. And yeah, and especially in the hands of the ignorant, I think data does more harm than good. It's like knowledge is power and power corrupts, I don't know. So I know I got a little off the path here of what you asked, but what you asked is sort of like, our data people will gather a lot of data, whether it be survey data through players or like, hours. You get your typical KPIs, which is key performance indexes. So this is like, how's retention doing this set? Because like, we can compare our player hours set over set. But it's like, for the people who do play, are we retaining those players? What's our 30-day retention? You can get a bunch of metrics. And those metrics can inform things, right? So it's like, a dumb example might be, hey, set 10, when it started, didn't have as many players as when set 9 started. These are fake numbers, by the way. This is not real data. I'm just giving you an example. Set 10 didn't have as many players as set 9 on day 1. But set 10 retained players better, and the drop-off wasn't as quick day over day as set 9 was. Like, that is a type of information we might get. But the conclusions you can draw from that are actually pretty wide, right? And again, these are fake numbers. I'm not giving you actual data. I'm just giving you examples. But like, the data you can draw from that could be Well, does that mean the end of set 8 and the end of set 9 were in a worse state? Like set 9 was a worse state, so we just had less players transition to 10? Does that mean the publishing assets weren't as good for set 10 and no one was aware of it? And clearly I'm making this up because set 10's publishing assets were amazing. That cinematic, whew. You know, or is it set 10 is retaining better because the gameplay's better? It's just a better set than set 9 was. Or is it the mechanic, right? Like, you still have to do additional research to understand this data rather than just going, hey, set 10, number low, therefore problem. But man, the number of people who do the latter is too uncomfortably high. Too uncomfortably high. So, but there you go. That's kind of how we use data. And like I said, there's a lot of it. To be honest, I think like my boss and my boss's boss, they use that data a lot more than I do. You know, especially on the revenue side of things, that's actually a place where data does matter a lot more, because revenue is essentially giant graphs and bars and things like that. But thankfully, I don't usually have to worry about that too much. Again, my job, make game good. Game good, subjective, lots of factors, hard to quantify. So, yeah, people are tough. So, there you go. All right, I didn't get through the 5th question. 4 is not bad, though. 31 minutes in is usually when I end it. So, hopefully you guys have a good day. What I'll say is I have been far less productive than I wish I would have been these last few weeks. I need to find a way to motivate myself to be much more productive, which is weird because the new team has been very happy with me so far and the contributions I've given. It's just for my own standards, it doesn't feel like enough. And for the main thing I'm doing, it's just, I don't know, man. I find it hard to motivate myself to do that kind of thing because I know where it ends up. So, I don't know. I got to find a way. Like, I was not very productive yesterday. I need to find a way to kick myself into gear. I need to. So, that's going to be my thing today. Figure out how to motivate myself to go, 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 go. So, okay, cool. Well, hopefully you guys have a good day. I know tomorrow's branch cut for the team, so today is really the last day. If you guys have any spicy feedback you want to tell the team for PBE, you need to let them know today. So if you see this and you're like, hey, I'm on PBE and I really think X is broken or underpowered or bugged or whatever, tell the team today, because tomorrow at noon, branch cut happens and they can't do much more work after that. So they'll get their 1A patch, but today's got to be the day. So scream loud from the rooftop if they need to hear it. I keep retweeting Tim's notes. You can always reply to him on Twitter, but let him know today's the day. So, all right, that's going to do it for me. Until next time, take it easy.